what we're looking at is apparently either a World War II Type 7C sunk in 1945 or UB3 class submarine that was sunk in September 1918. You see, the Type 7 submarine in World War II was based on the UB3 class of World War I. So there are a lot of design similarities between them. They both have 4 bow torpedo tubes. They both have a single stern torpedo tube. They both have 2 propellers. They both have 2 rudders. The Type 7 is longer, 67 meters versus 55 meters. It's also got a different hull form. The original World War I class is mainly a double hull, whereas the Type 7 is a saddle tank. Easiest place to start is around the conning tower, because there's a noticeable and obvious difference. The World War I submarine would have a fairly small conning tower with a large deck gun in front of it. World War II U-boat, English Channel, 1945, no deck gun. The conning tower will be much larger and will have anti-aircraft gun mounts on the rear of it. The World War II boat is going to be easier to identify. Why? Because you had multiple yards building these, and they built them a little bit different, particularly in the pattern of the drainage holes along the hull. Besides, okay, it's World War I, we see that deck gun, we see the small conning tower. Now we're going to swim around it looking for damage. Around the deck gun, we want to see ready-use ammunition containers. Why? Because that's going to tell us this is a war loss. And then obviously confirm the specifics, the 4 bow tubes, the single stern, the rudders, etc. And then to identify it, scrub the propellers.
We have a U-boat wreck. This has been clearly made by the divers, but as the Germans were both during the First and the Second World War in this area in the Channel, there is the possibility that the wreck is either dating from the First World War or the Second World War. But what we have in finding out, first, as I said in my email, is it a First World War or a Second World War wreck? We have to look for certain features which will give us quite an easy way. The other point is the Second World War U-boat types had so-called saddle tanks, right, which is like a tank on both sides, on starboard, on port side, which were used for storing either water or fuel oil. Mm-hmm. And once this fuel oil was used up, they were filled with water. And if corrosion has not reduced the wreck to the pure pressure hull, mm-hmm, these saddle tanks will be easily found on both sides of the wreck. The Type 7C was a total of 67 meters long. Okay. Overall, and the pressure hull had about 50 meters. So we have found out, of course, certain, design features, mm-hmm, which would enable us to differ between individual boats. Because, for example, some boats had a special type of snorkel equipment, right, being fitted, and others had a different one. And this is for most places known. So if we find down there on the sea ground a certain type of snorkel equipment, mm-hmm, we can tick off a number of boats which could not be our client. In the First World War, the Germans used the propellers, yes, the propeller blades, yes, for doing inscriptions into the propeller blades. In the Second World War, we have cases, mm-hmm, that some U-boats also carried this kind of inscriptions, right, on the propeller hulls. Ah. But we have seen also cases that this was not the case, because, okay, the Germans were aware at that time that the British had dived German submarine wrecks in the First World War and looked just for this kind of information. So they said, will we be clever the next time?
Right.
We don't put this information on the propeller hubs to give the British or anybody else more information than he should have on a wreck.